This is Yuuji, an adventurer in the village known as Fasten. Due to his classification as a monster tamer, he's assumed by most to be weak and is often overlooked, but in secret, he's actually a very powerful sorcerer known as a sage. As he returns back to the Adventurers Guild, he brings with him a metric ton of rare dry flowers, causing everyone to be shocked. Suddenly, they receive a report of 10,000 monsters heading towards the village, so Yuuji steps in to help the other adventurers mount a defense against seemingly impossible odds. However, he plans to summon dragon fire to entirely wipe out the incoming attackers. Although initially apprehensive with his plan, the adventurers are handed dry potions and take up defensive positions in front of the town gates. Meanwhile, Yuuji tracks the incoming monsters down with multiple tame slimes as well as his wolf monster named Proudwolf and a forest spirit dryad. As the battle rages on, Yuuji feeds a dragon bone to one of his slimes and casts his magic maker skill, allowing him to sift through any magic spell. At the same time, the dryad and his other slimes captures the man responsible for the invasion, who turns out to be a member of a cult called the Blue Moon of Salvation. However, the cultist self-destructs after being captured, leaving behind a magical lantern he used to control the monsters. Back at the gates, the townspeople are getting pushed back, so Proudwolf is ordered to come and help the adventurers. Fire-breathing slimes aid the adventurers as well, while Yuuji calls the rest of his team back to town. When the adventurers retreat back inside the wall gates, Yuuji places a barrier around the town and summons Hellfire of Demise, causing Dragonfire to be unleashed. He casts it one more time to finish off the straggling survivors, but the sheer amount of magic required causes him to pass out. Afterwards, Yuuji awakens, and before he's thanked for saving the town, he briefly remembers a past life, causing him to sneak away from the celebrating adventurers before they can fully thank or reward him. At night, two men plan to target a man they seemingly know nothing about. The next morning, Yuuji arrives at a brand new town and stops to buy food for himself and his slimes. Afterwards, he enters the town's Adventurer Guild, where he's about to be denied, but he gets accepted due to his tracking abilities. Shortly after, the knife wielder Rodis, archer Tina, and spear wielder Lisa invite him to form a party where they accept a job request to track down a rock dragon. As the group head out to investigate, Proudwolf encounters 5 monsters, so he alerts Yuuji. The gang then hurries to the location where Rodis is able to easily dispatch the monsters, impressing Yuuji. At night, his newfound friends eagerly asks how he became so proficient at tracking, but Rodis tells the girls to go to sleep. Afterwards, Yuuji dreams of falling asleep and reincarnating in the world of a game he was playing, where he starts as a novice tamer. There, he enters an abandoned house and finds the Grimoire of Divine Destruction. Suddenly, he tames several slimes, allowing him to acquire multiple skills every time the slimes read a book. At the same time, all the slimes start happily chanting his name as he gains the title of Sage. Meanwhile, as he awakens, he finds Rodis has took off during the middle of his night watch. The slimes also inform him that Tina and Lisa are gone as well. It's then revealed that the girls tailed Rodis due to their suspicions, but they didn't want to bring Yuuji along, thinking he's unable to fight. Rodis then appears at a bandit camp, where it's revealed that he's actually a bandit that lures and kidnaps adventurers to sell them into slavery. Yuuji then freezes the entire bandits' camp in solid ice, and the girls realize one of the bandits is Gelios, an infamous bandit and cult member with a substantial price on his head. As Yuuji connects the dots, he realizes the Blue Moon cult was behind the attack at Fasten, and he appears concerned about a cryptic claim Gelios made about a future calamity. Regardless, the next morning, Yuuji continues tracking the rock dragon down with Tina and Lisa. A flashback then occurs during adventurer registration examinations, where Yuuji accidentally shocks his instructor with his magic prowess. Back in the present, Yuuji selects weak spells to hopefully not garner more attention. However, the moon and sky suddenly turn purple, as foretold by the cultist prophecy, and a blue dragon appears, forcing them to fall back to the nearby Canyon of Delight. On the way there, Proudwolf and his slimes destroy high-level monsters, which surprise the girls again. As they mingle, the rock dragon emerges, causing Yuuji a soul of the dragon, leaving behind only the skeleton, while the girls cower behind a rock. Afterwards, they head back to the Adventurers Guild with the dragon's skull and the bounty on Gelios' head, so the guild pays them an insane 14 million gold. Later, Yuuji is drawn into a meeting with the guild chief Rayard and Grand Cathedral representative Father Stale. Stale then reveals the church legend of a dragon appearing and destroying a continent before being defeated by a divine emissary who rival the power of God. 30 years ago, the church performed a summoning ceremony to cause the emissary to appear 1 week before the dragon, but the emissary never came. Even without the emissary, Rayard orders the guild to attack the dragon at first light. However, in private, Stale reveals a holy vision which directed him to give Yuuji a church relic, the Dagger of Kethis, which can focus magic power. That night, as his slimes report that the blue dragon continues to grow larger, Yuuji fears many adventurers will perish and finally comes to a decision. The next day, Yuuji and his slimes spring an attack on the dragon. Utilizing protective barrier magic, Yuuji is able to avoid the dragon's attacks, and with his fire magic concentrated in the dagger of Kethis, stabs it in the neck so the explosion destroys the dragon instantly. With the dragon mysteriously defeated, Stale leaves but Rayard suspects that it was Yuuji who was behind it all. Having drawn too much attention again, he leaves for the town of Ricardo, which according to Tina and Lisa is a completely ordinary place. Later, Dryad informs Yuuji that dead dragons contain something called dragon grace, which has sprouted mushrooms around the corpse, with which she can make potions, red to increase sage skills, and blue to restore depleted magic. As the potions brew, Yuuji remembers the first time he met where Dryad was dying after an unidentified person drained her forest's magic with a crystal. So he saved her with a magic transfusion and then destroyed the crystal, allowing the restoration of her forest. Meanwhile, Yuuji encounters a village shrouded in fog called the Village of Messias. The villagers are suspicious of his presence but allow him to leave when he assures them that he was just lost. As he leaves, the villagers contact an unknown person to reassure him that their plan to retrieve the dragon grace is unaffected. Afterwards, Yuuji makes it to where Ricardo should be, but he instead finds the landscape covered in unnatural snow. After finally entering Ricardo, Yuuji learns that the snow is unusual and none of the villagers were prepared for it. As such, all the firewood has already been used up. Disappointed he can't try Ricardo's famous cuisine without cooking fires, Yuuji figures out how to use his slimes to dry out freshly chopped trees to make perfect firewood. The town chef, grateful for the wood, cooks Yuuji one of his finest dishes in gratitude. Seeing that the rest of Ricardo is still short on wood, Yuuji joins the local foresters and shocks them by procuring enough wood for the entire town to last several weeks. He then receives yet another meal, but the chef reveals that it's not his best food due to the fields where the town grows its famous herbs has become plagued with monsters that eat them. As such, Proud Wolf and the slimes help locate the boar-type monsters and defeat them. They also find a crystal orb which turns out to be dragon grace refined into a cursed crystal, which is currently absorbing all the magic in the area and causing the snow. Following other crystals set in a circular pattern, Yuuji locates the pattern's center and, despite Dryad's unhappy permission, destroys the forest around the center, revealing an old house with a trapdoor leading to the underground. Yuuji then discovers an enormous machine that uses stolen magic absorbed by the crystal orbs to mass-produce dragon grace. Meanwhile, the slimes explore the cave and emerge in Messias, proving that all the villagers are actually Blue Moon cultists. Their leader, Javier, is furious that when Yuuji destroyed the forest, he also damaged the machine. While working in secret, the slimes swallow all the cult's sacred texts and treasure. Thus, Yuuji decides to exterminate the cultists, until Javier mentions a weapon called Cleansing Flame, which will destroy the area the cultists die, including the entire Ricardo village, causing Yuuji to decide to let them all live, but all the cultists abruptly die to activate the flame. Working quickly, Yuuji retrieves the slimes and, combining every magical barrier he knows, creates a new spell called Total Isolation Barrier that prevents the flame from spreading beyond Messias. However, the snow starts to melt and the Ricardo villagers begin to celebrate Yuuji as the firewood hero and reward him with the chef's true finest meal, since he now has access to his herb field again. Meanwhile, they find that the texts are booby-trapped with a spell that turned them blank, except for a list of the cult's targets, which includes Yuuji. Elsewhere, two assassins with an identical list choose Yuuji as their next target.